This exclusive interview with Dr. Bharrat Jagdeo, the Vice President of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana. And this afternoon we will be discussing some serious issues affecting Guyanese, crime, COVID-19, the COVID-19 coronavirus, how it affects Guyanese and how the government is treating that, and the politics that has had a negative effect on Guyanese. Good afternoon, good evening, Dr. Jagdeo, and thank you for having me once again.
Yeah, good evening.
Getting straight into it and what the people want to hear about crime.
Sure.
A lot of people are asking the questions. I know behind the scenes the government has been working on some plans to address the crime situation, and the numbers suggest they're lower than where they were. There is a decrease in crime. But when you have high-profile crimes, such as the one that occurred last night, where someone was gunned down on Regent Street, it drives fear in the citizens, and they ask the question, what is being done? Can you tell the public about that?
Well, first of all, it's very unfortunate when anyone loses his or her life in the country. And crime is an issue that affects everyone. It creates a sense of unease in the population, and particularly when it's as high profile as what took place last night. So we have to make a concerted effort to address this. The President has outlined in great detail some of the initiatives we are working on, like the Smart Country Initiative instead of a Smart City Initiative, which is to cover the entire country with cameras, where that project is being prepared to roll out over the next year or so. And if we can cover the entire country with cameras, and these can be monitored at the regional level, then we should be able to not just see what takes place, but be able to track criminals should we have any criminal situation arising. And therefore, we have to deploy and have a regional capability, not only to track crime and to monitor for crime, but also to address crime, including serious crime. So when we went to Parliament with an initiative where you'd have not a special unit, but like what we had in the past, a joint unit of the police and army working together to regionalize their fight against crime, APNU said we were setting up a parallel police force. But this is typical of what they did in the past. Anything that will address crime and in any dimension, they will try to undermine, because they're the biggest beneficiaries of crime. And so they have mischaracterized that initiative, said it's a new killing squad, etc. It is not. Regionalization of the police force and crime fighting initiatives has been announced by Granger, President Granger, when he was there. And I recall him in 2017, I think it was, receiving a report from Mr. Russell Combe, the British consultant. And he said, with this report, I will solve crime in Guyana. He was saying, and the PPP was bluffing about fighting crime. Well, the report that he received from Mr. Combe has as one of its key elements the regionalization of crime fighting efforts. So clearly, it's not just regionalization, more means of like predictive software, monitoring the situation, training people for in the forensic side, but also in enforcement capabilities, equipping the police force with just basic transportation, which they didn't have. Most of the units that they had were down. The police force didn't have mobility. We just, I think, purchased about 50 new cars for the police force to come in, police cars, etc. So it is going to be very, very important that we work together as a country to tackle crime. We're looking at cybercrime, which will become more important as our economy gets more sophisticated. We've already seen so many cases of criminal fraud in the financial sector, Ponzi schemes, people fraudulently converting people's assets, getting fake transports, etc., passing their assets. All of the capability has to be built in that regard too. The person who got killed last night, when I saw the name, I was a bit shocked because when I was president, he was considered to be one of the most wanted persons in Brazil. We were told that he escaped from prison there. And we apprehended him and we handed him over to the Brazilian authorities. So I didn't even know he was back in the country, and I don't know when he came back, if he came back in the APNU period, but it seems as though he had a lot of friends connected with the PNC. And so I'm going to find out a bit more about this. I have to ask, I asked Robson Ben already to check it, but it seems he has some direct connections with some people who were big financiers of the APNU campaign in 2017 and were bypassing the system, undermining the drug enforcement efforts we had in the last 5 years. So they see an absence of seizure of drugs or major busts in the last 5 years as a sign that there was no drug dealing. They want us to believe that the drug dealers, when they were in government, became church-going people. But we know that this is a very lucrative sector, and that didn't happen. That a lot of the drugs, we believe, went through undetected. Since PPP came into office, we've been working very closely with the DEA, and you've had several major busts here and abroad with close collaboration with our drug enforcement people and our foreign counterparts in Colombia, in Suriname, in the United States of America, in Europe. We've had a good working relationship with these law enforcement agencies. But crime is a very emotive issue, and we hope that we can rise to the challenge quickly.
Is one of your government's plans filling the shortcomings in the economic voids that causes poverty, that in some cases causes the crime? Is the government's plan, one of the government's plan, to fill those voids?
So there are several things that we have to work on. Apart from the tough law enforcement reform, prison reform is next in line. So we are building 3 not state of the art, but safe, decent prisons at Lusignan that can accommodate nearly 1,000 prisoners. That means we could practically move most of our prisoners to Lusignan. We now are putting money aside to build a prison for women, but in another area in Lusignan. So we have an entire compound. We plan to do recreational facility there, a school there that you have to, once you become a prisoner, you have to go to school. It's compulsory. So we believe then we'd build a training school so that people can learn a skill. We are going to take rehabilitation seriously. Now, the recidivism is very high now, recidivism. That means people repeating. They come out of prison, they go back in prisons. If we can cut that by half through giving people skills and raising, maybe a better education in prison, it would serve our society well. That's one area that we are looking at. Thirdly, what you mentioned about keeping kids away from harmful influence. A lot of the kids now with single parents, or mothers, not just single parents, but a lot of with single parents, their mothers are away, often trying to make a living. They don't have parental guidance. They then fall prey to a lot of bad influence. And so how do we use civil society to be there to guide these kids when they need the guidance? How do we occupy them in sports and other ventures so that we can chart a different path. When they come to the crossroad of having to make a decision whether you go the crooked path or the straight path, then somebody is there to help them. We have to work at that. Then there are lots of people, particularly at the lower end, who commit crime because they're hungry. They're hungry. You have to find opportunities and employment for people. There are some criminals, though, you can't, even with a job, you wouldn't be able to take care, to influence them, because it's a lure of crime and the lucrative nature is too great. And those you have to deal with condigning, forcefully. But outside of that, there are lots of people, as you pointed out, that we can work on, communities, young people, giving others more jobs. And that is why job creating initiatives are so important to us. Even with this pandemic, we have been working heavily at putting people back to work. Like some countries have stopped people from working. We've put people back to work. We've maintained public sector employment. Mostly, when you look at the hiring by APNU, 15,000 new people, and they talk about ethnic cleansing and all of that. Since the PPP got into office, I doubt we have terminated 1,000 persons from employment and in the public sector. But they put in nearly 15,000 persons in public sector employed in just 5 years. We could have easily come in and say a lot of these people are political, immediately move them out. But we want to make sure that transitions take place, people have employment, they can go somewhere else. Then in the rest of the society, we're trying to open up new jobs, oil, gas related jobs, jobs in the construction sector. We've seen a big boom. We have also used other funds to create jobs in areas where it's difficult, like in the communities, by awarding contracts to larger groups of people. We can get more employment, like in Linden and Berbice and other places. So we're working aggressively to create jobs. APNU, we lost 30,000 jobs under APNU in the first few years, the first 3 years. If you look at the first 5 years, maybe even close to 40,000 jobs. We promised net an increase of 50,000 jobs. We're already starting to work, although we have the pandemic in place. And with the plans that we're putting in place now, we will meet that target. We have to put people back to work. That is what we promise. So it's very important, as you pointed out, also not just taking a tough line against crime, but making sure people can work and earn a living to take care of their families.
Dr. Jagdeo, one of the great concerns, another concern of Guyanese, and for the most part, the government has done fairly well. In a recent interview I had with the French ambassador, he spoke about his experiences in Suriname and Trinidad and French Guyana and how the government of Guyana were treating the pandemic, COVID-19. A lot of the worry that is out there comes from the opposition's attitude, how they disseminate information to people who really rely on their information. They've not been giving their supporters the right information, and they have a two-sided attitude to how they do things. They would say they're in support, they've all vaccinated, get the vaccines, they've all been vaccinated, but yet they would support their supporters in saying be careful or be cautious and it is your choice and these kind of things, while the government is doing a lot to try to achieve herd immunity with the intention of getting Guyana back on track. How has this, the attitude of the opposition, affected governments rolling out the plans to attain herd immunity?
Yeah, well, Critic, this is a very important subject. And what what is fascinating in a negative way to me is that the level of hypocrisy that we witness in the society from the leaders, many leaders, particularly APNO, AFC. They took the vaccine. They all are doing well because of the vaccine, because they have minimized their risk of not just catching the COVID-19 virus, but also in ending up in hospital. And yet, quietly and some openly have been saying to people, don't get vaccinated. And it's so callous, it's so uncaring, and they're doing this to people in their own base. And rather than sit down and dispel the fictions surrounding the vaccine from that have been arrived on the internet and has been circulated widely around the world, all the conspiracy theories that somehow this is a North American plot to put powder in your body and that the vaccine can make you become a monkey. And there are a lot of unsubstantiated, craziness. And if people, rather than say to people, look, judge for yourself, appeal to your intellect, look at the statistics. In the world, upwards of 2 billion people have been vaccinated. And if you look at the hospitals, the hospitalization, very, very few from the vaccinated group have been in hospitals, because they don't, even if they catch the COVID, it doesn't become severe. There is that evidence. 2 billion people have not turned into monkeys, and they're from every part of the world. In Guyana's case, we have about 56% of our adult population vaccinated with a first dose. We have 30% fully vaccinated, both doses. You don't see these people. I'm vaccinated. All the MPs are vaccinated. You don't see us growing horns or having an adverse effect. And most of those people, in fact, they're not in hospital. The doctor who was in hospital, the 2 doctors who were in hospital, the nurse who died recently, they were not vaccinated. We have now over this age, we're lucky in that over age 62, we have about 86% of our adult population vaccinated, the older folks are over 62 years old. So we have had a bigger uptake among older folks. And so these are the figures there. The vaccines are saving lives. Any vaccine, 1 dose or 2 doses. So we have to talk to our people. People who don't want a vaccine, they're not monsters, they're not bad people. They're just misinformed, and they've bought into a lot of rumors, and it's up to the leaders who are responsible to change that, to talk to people, to assure them that if you take the vaccine, it's for their good. And I'm appealing to those people. It's not just their health at risk. It's fine if you were living on your own and you didn't have to interact. And you have a right to live in your home as a hermit. But the moment you start going out, you go to work or you go to a club, and everyone else is taking the vaccine and you don't, then you're contaminating people. You're putting other people's lives at risk. The teachers, if they don't take the vaccine, they're going to put the children's life at risk. Not their own lives, the children's life. We have an act now of 1974 that we can force the vaccination of all kids before they go to school. Compulsory vaccination before you go to school for a whole range of vaccines, like in the past, polio, etc. You have to, it's compulsory. We don't want to make this COVID one for under 18 compulsory. But we will soon have the vaccines, the Pfizer vaccine here for the first time, enough to vaccinate all the kids, 12 to 18. So they will now, we hope that their parents will get them vaccinated. We can go the compulsory route, but we did not want to do that. Even for the other categories, we said you cannot be unvaccinated and enjoy the same access, ease of access to contaminate others. So you can come to a ministry, you can go to any government building, you can go to work. If you don't have the vaccination, you don't get vaccinated. But you have to now, at your own cost, show that you're not carrying the virus. So you have to now go and get a PCR test once a week. That is what we made it. We didn't say compulsory vaccination mandatory. We said if you don't get vaccinated, you can't go to certain places. You have to now go with a PCR test, go to work with a PCR test. So a lot of this, I heard people were restricted from going into government buildings. Let me make it clear, even if you have one vaccine, once you have the card, no security guard should turn you back. But there is not a requirement that you're fully vaccinated. The first vaccine that you get, once your card says you've had one vaccine, you can enter into any building because you've already, if you have it for 2 weeks, you're already developing a significant amount of immunity. So that is important. Somebody said to me, patients are turned away at hospitals because they don't have the vaccine, and that is unacceptable. That was never part of any order. Patients, whether they're vaccinated or not, they have to enter the compound. But when I hear doctors and nurses don't want to take the vaccine, they're supposed to be science-based. They're in a science-based field. How can you be in a science-based field and then have these weird views about vaccines? It's almost unacceptable. And teachers of all, they should be teaching, they should be educated, reading. And then they have this, they succumb to rumors and unsubstantiated views. So this is what, there always have to be some adjustments, like for example, the unvaccinated coming home, right? If you didn't have a vaccination, you couldn't board a flight. That may be adjusted, but when people come home, they'd have to get the vaccines because we don't want our people to be stranded too. So this is a struggle. What bothers me is that we are trying to save lives. Imagine they're protesting a government trying to save lives, to get you immunized so you don't die, you and your family. And there are many of these people who are now protesting did not say a word when President Granger signed that order just over a year ago, which authorized the Minister of Health to take some of the drastic measures. They could lock you away without any protest. They can burn your belongings, burn your building if they found you with COVID. Take away the dead. You couldn't even see the dead. They used to just burn them away. Burn them. That is what a person, had you got under the Granger's order, if you had COVID, they could have come and burned down your building. That is in the order. People should read it. And now we are saying, please get your vaccine. It costs us money. We bought the vaccine. People are struggling around the world to get the vaccine. to get it. We bought it. Just take the vaccine so you can protect yourselves and your family. And a lot of people now are using the vaccines to stir up other trouble. I saw David Hines saying we must undermine this government at every chance, using a vaccine protest to say to people who are being vaccinated, who we want vaccinated, preying on some ignorance there, to tell them they must use that to undermine us. Who are they undermining? They're undermining themselves, because when they end up in hospital, it's the state responsibility, first of all, but they will die. And David Hines will not be there. So he suddenly shows up, he pops out the country, comes back, tells the people, use every opportunity to undermine the government on this. But these are people who miss their perks a lot. A person like David Hines, now I see him, suddenly he represents Afro-Guyanese again. And when he was there, he did absolutely nothing when Afro-Guyanese were treated badly. What happened? He had a cushy job, and his relative Tabitha Sabrabo or something like that also had a ministerial job. They missed the perks. In less than 1 year, they talk about Afro-Guyanese not getting land. In less than 1 year, we have given out more land, house lots to Afro-Guyanese than the 5 years of APNU. But of course, we didn't give it to the big wigs like Figueroa and all of the others, because all the people who got land under APNU were only connected politically. The Figueroas, Lowenfield, Eric Phillips, Hopkinson, the minister who is now acting up against Simona Brooms, the syndicates land, all of that. They took it all for themselves. So this is using the vaccine now to stir up all sorts of things, blocking the bridge in Linden. So imagine you're blocking the bridge in Linden because you want to be able to contaminate others, basically. It's not your rights you're fighting for now. You're fighting to be a hazard to other people. If you were living on a planet by yourself, isolated, that's fine. But what right do they have to contaminate others and the children of this country? They have no such right.
Dr. Jagdeo, in light of the fact that it is clear the supporters of APNU are being misled and taken down a wrong path, does your administration have a plan? Because it is about educating, it's about the methods of dissemination of information. Does your very, very important people in this country are being misled? Our teachers are being misled by a union that is aligned with the opposition and intentionally creating an unstable atmosphere. Mm-hmm. Doctors are acting in a misguided manner that they should not. What does your administration plan to do to reach out and help those people? Since it is my opinion, my personal opinion, a lot of people are looking on and saying, Critic, you gotta come, you gotta talk to these people, you gotta explain to them, they're being lied to, they're being misled. But what is your government doing, since these are all Guyanese too?
So programs like these hopefully would urge people to think for themselves. So it's the parents who have to help us, like with the teachers. First of all, APNU said to the parents, don't collect the $15,000 grant and the $4,000 for the uniform, the $19,000. Well, people showed that they were not going to listen to stupidity, the APNU supporters, because it was utter stupidity to tell people not to collect money for their children. Of course, APNU was embarrassed that they took it away, the $10,000 grant for the 5 years. They deprived the children of the country. And when we introduced it back, they felt bad. They thought people will not take it. Well, people defied them because common sense prevailed. And so the people saw through what they were trying to do. Then Coretta MacDonald, in a vile rant, said to teachers they must not help the government share out the money they had teachers. That is how low they got. That this money was going to children of every single race, every single religion, all the children of the country. Now we are looking at that in public schools. We're even looking at extending it to private schools now. And so just that is how the parents help, by defying stupidity. And there's an abundance of stupidity in the APNU camp. Next thing, they told the children not to apply, the young people of this country, not to apply for the scholarships program, that PPP is only going to give Indian people. You know, this is a racist party. Well, again, the young people of Guyana defied stupidity in APNU and senseless behavior in APNU. People who have enormous double standards, because a ton of them got scholarships that they didn't deserve, worth hundreds of millions of dollars for themselves and their families, ministers and their families. And they were trying to get young people not to take scholarships, young Afro-Guyanese, from a PPP government. Well, the young people applied. If you look at the names we publish all 6,000 names in the newspapers, you will see about maybe 1,000 or so from the hinterland, and in the coastal area, the scholarships are evenly divided among Afro and Indo-Guyanese. You just look through the list. So that's 6,000 scholarships given to people.
The requirements for acceptance of scholarships is just your need to access them, not your race, not your political affiliation.
But they tried to get people not to do that, to apply even. You remember the rant by Ferguson, scholarships, 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 almost akin to a mad woman's rant. And the people defy them again. So I'm saying people have to defy stupidity. And the parents have to also exercise pressure on the teachers and others too. Because when they don't get vaccinated and they show up in school, then again, who are they going to contaminate? Who are they going to how are we going to get back to normalcy so we can generate more jobs quickly and all of us can move around without masks, get our economy going back at full steam, unless we all take collective action? And then to listen to Harman with his utter stupidity, nonsense, saying that, oh, the COVID grant was only given to selected people by Nigel Darmland. We went to almost every household in this country. Now, I know that some people didn't get. My sister didn't get it. She lives in the Commons Lodge area. She said to me she wasn't home. And I said to her, unfortunately now, you weren't home. They couldn't put in a pink slip. You can't get it. And it's sad because she feels she's entitled to it. But it's not like discrimination. So there are few people who did not get because of some circumstances. But on the whole, we've visited every household. And people can testify to that. It didn't matter whether you voted APNU or PPP. So again, people recognize the stupidity. Like recently, he said we're tapping his phone because every time he takes a call, his phone acts up. Well, it's time for him he collected a lot of money, and I want to take you on a tour after this to show you the safe, the infamous safe. It's a massive safe that he has in this room here that he never left the key for. I'll give you a nice shot for the camera. But he needs to get a new phone or talk to the service provider. Not every time your phone drops a call, the government is spying on him. Now, why would we need to spy on Harman? But you know, the reason why he said that just a couple days ago is because he wanted to deflect from the fact that when I spoke on a recent interview, I pointed out that President Granger was tapping his phone, Trotman's phone, Valda Lawrence, Ramchatan's phone. They were being tapped because he did not trust them. He didn't trust them. And this happened after they were trying to steal the elections, because the pressure started mounting on President Granger. And then he realized that there was an active plot by a number of people, Harman leading it, to steal the elections. Harman, it is so, you have to test people's basically tolerance, their patience, and basically whether they're mentally retarded to tell people in this country that they won the elections. Any person who believes that in the face of all the evidence, in the face of the entire international community saying otherwise, in the face of the fact that the SOPs that Lowenfield had and that the PPP had and everyone had showed that the PPP won, but their SOPs never surfaced so far. They can't be made public because Harman is sitting on them like in a nest waiting for them to hatch little eggs, you know. Can't get them out before time or else they would spoil, you know, like when you sit on eggs. So that's where the SOPs are. So any person, they're doing documentaries, etc., that would believe that they won the election has to be delusional or mentally retarded. Mentally retarded, because it means they can't think for themselves, they can't read and understand. They're not curious. They listen to stupidity.
Dr. Jagdeo, just for some clarity.
Yes.
Is your government in possession of evidence that suggests that David Arthur Granger was not complicit in what was happening at the time, deliberate attempts to rig the election?
I believe, I said before, I believe that Mr. Granger, President Granger, is not a very hands-on person. This is my personal assessment. He lives on the loyalty of his followers and his inner circle. That he trusted Harman explicitly and in an enormous way. And therefore, whatever was told to him, he lived in a bubble. They told him, Chief, you're the greatest. We're going to win the elections, you know. And he believed that. He believed when they told him after the elections that the rigging started to take place, that he won the elections. He was prepared to be sworn in. But however, he wanted others to see that he won. So he said, you know, I want this to be indisputable, because he felt that he could have proven he won based on the belief of what was fed to him. And Harman was that conduit for misleading him throughout it all, with the rest of the cabal, the rigging cabal bearing him. So eventually he started imbibing and repeating what they were saying. So he started defending the rigging. So he defended the rigging. He put the country through trauma. What I fault him for is that he should have, at that point in time when he saw the entire world come out against the rigging, when he saw the published SOPs, he should have asked them, where are our SOPs? When he saw the controversy, he should have gotten more involved. But he wanted to believe he won the elections. And he wanted to believe the people around him. And he wanted to be sworn in. So he was willing to go along with the rigging. So at some point in time, when the pressure mounted from the international community, from CARICOM, everyone else, and he felt that there were two sets of narratives, and there were people who were talking to him. I know maybe from the US government, from Washington, Commonwealth, from the CARICOM, they were talking to him too, the leaders. So he felt that he had to find out for himself what was really going on, because he recognized, he himself saw that they were undermining him, even him now at that stage. And they were worried about the sanctions too. I think he was personally worried about the sanctions on himself and his family. And so he resorted to tapping these individuals. And that may have helped in the ultimate decision to accept the results, because the day when Claudette Singh made that call, the GCOM commissioners, the GCOM, that's the Saturday on which Irfan Ali was sworn in as president, the commissioners asked that we talk about power sharing from the other side, and that Claudette should call President Granger. And then he called me. I was at Freedom House. We knew that was going to be a crucial day. And I said to him, the time has passed for that. And the key issue is, first of all, we have to swear in the legitimate president. And he recognized that too, because Claudette Singh was going to declare Irfan Ali. And I called her back and I said, I spoke with President Granger, but we don't think we can accede to this request. And I told him that too. And then the swearing in took place. There are lots of things that took place, the recount, etc., some of which I can talk about, some I can't talk about. And it's a long story of intrigues on the legal cases, the roller coaster, the changes, the treachery, the downright unprofessional behavior, people, the discovery of what was taking place in judicial decisions, how private lawyers were assisting in drafting crucial decisions. We have a whole it would take me a long time to talk about all of that. A lot of issues.
Is your government still planning to hold a COI into what transpired?
Yes, definitely we have to have that COI, because in the face, particularly in the face of them saying that they won the elections, I thought they will just hide their faces and disappear and try to remove the stain of putting Guyana through the trauma that they did, that they would be so ashamed that they would not surface for a long time. But these are bare-faced people. Bare-faced people. They stand up in parliament, some of the most corrupt leaders. The fact that we didn't charge them, they're now making that a virtue. You know, like Patterson's real heist, theft of government assets by getting people to buy things from the state entities for him. And he denied it, gold, jewelry, and all of that. Annette Ferguson, Roysdale Ford, and the shenanigans surrounding licenses, gambling licenses, and all of that at the Gaming Commission, and his role in the fuel rackets. You know, Joseph Harmon and the terror he was to businessmen who were looking just to get a contract or get a favorable word. The terror he was and what they had to do. The large, you know, so when I can list all of these things, you recall Cathy used contracts in her own ministries to her own companies. They forget this stuff. You know, because we didn't go out like what they did when they got into office, tried to lock up everyone. Everyone had to go to Soku, Ramatara, myself, Luncheon, Sam Hines, every minister. We didn't do that because we were busy working. It doesn't mean that they were not engaged in a heist of the country. The most corrupt government we've ever had, and the most inept too, the most incompetent. Even Basil Williams reinforced that. Basil Williams said he didn't take money. He was implying they were busy filling their pockets, his colleagues. And he spoke about corruption and incompetence of Harmon. Basil Williams just spoke about it in an interview. So a lot of this, you know, they're very virtuous. They're lecturing us, Patterson on the oil to gas, the gas to energy project. Suddenly they become the virtues. Imagine Harmon talking about fighting corruption and who is corrupt. Harmon of all persons. And the most incompetent sycophant, because without President Granger, he was nothing, he is nothing. President Granger, by virtue of being the leader of the list, planted him as opposition leader, bypassing other people, and chose a lot of the henchmen surrounding him who were beholden to Harmon as members of parliament. That didn't go through a proper process. I'm the leader of the list, the PPP list, but we had a party decision made as to who to select to go to the parliament.
Dr. Jagdeo,
as General Secretary of the party.
A lot of mistakes were made. The opposition made a lot of mistakes when they were in government. They did not deliver what they told their people. You as opposition leader at that time was dissatisfied with what your people were getting, since everybody has representation. Do you think, would you contribute your government's actions and the input in the people, the grants that you've been given, or just the opposition members looking at them and realizing that they're a colossal failure? Would you contribute, which one of the acts would you contribute to this abysmal turnout that the opposition get? Because in the past, the opposition created much confusion in this country. Could have brought out numbers, they could have brought their people to create protests, cause mass confusion, destruction of property. Now the opposition themselves, members and even MPs, have to take to the streets and protest, trying to get handfuls of people to protest.
Yes.
Would you contribute your government's input in the people and they have been heartened by your actions, or the opposition supporters just seeing and being dissatisfied in totality with the opposition's actions?
So my view is that because of this inept leadership from Harmon and the other leaders, because of their lack of vision, they can tell you everything what we shouldn't do, but they don't have a vision as to what to do. They're incapable of laying out a plan for the future. When you think about Annette Ferguson, Mahi Paul, Sherrod Duncan, they would do well in a rum shop, a drunken environment, you know, where or a place where I don't know, maybe where people have diminished capability, but they can't run government. They can't understand the basics. They can just mislead people. They're total, you know, so they can't, with that attitude, get back into government. because we worked very hard. They had the government's purse that they use so broadly, 419.5 billion, Guyana dollars, 2 billion US that they spent liberally. They campaign on the money, they buy all their material. They had every media house. They had the incumbency. They had the police that was trying to squeeze some elements in the police, and they couldn't win. Now we intend to fulfill all our plans. To the children of this country, on jobs, to pensioners, to change this country. You tell me if that group has any possibility. They're not going to. And if people think people have to make choices in life. You don't align yourself with failure. We have open arms in the PPP to everybody who wants to come and embrace it. But they don't even have to embrace us to benefit from the programs in the country, because we believe that we have to advance all of Guyana, all of its people. So you're not going to see us vindictively trying to get rid of a sector because they didn't support us like what they did with the sugar industry. You were not going to see that under the PPP. It's vindictive behavior. And what you will see is a government working for everyone. And that is why through the COVID grant, flood relief, everything, that we are going to make sure that it's broad-based and the development impact is felt right across Guyana. But this group here is, Harman said I look unwell in the last interview. If I'm looking unwell, it's because I have to contend with the stupidity every day of this group and do my work. That is the only reason I might look unwell.
Funny enough, Dr. Jagdeo, in my interviews, people expect some bit of calm and relaxation,
Yeah.
Now, this document is actually a printout of what turned out to be a statement on the APNU page, which just adds up to what I think in reading it. Some big fancy words even for me.
Yeah.
I think it was a personal letter that was leaked, because the opposition leader has accepted in this that you're a sharp person, but you didn't seem sharp in the interview. So there's some bit of acceptance. I think he might have been sending a message to you.
Yeah.
A slew of fancy words. And one of the things that I've come across, and I want to talk about, is after futile attempts by President Irfan Ali, this is in his statement, and Prime Minister Mark Phillips to defend the record of the PPP regime's last 12 months in office, Jagdeo decided that he had to emerge from his engine room to see if he could salvage a very sad situation. He went on to suggest, I am your sidekick. But this is what dawned upon me. And this is the opposition leader, which I think plays a great role in bringing down a party. Just came out of government, showed that it had some bit of stands and some bit of stamina to represent its people, and it seems that it's losing that now as a result of one man. Sadly, his lame attempts, fancy words again, he goes on to say the people have been suffering economic and social hardships over the past 12 months after they were beginning to live a good life under the APNU AFC coalition. Now, he suggested that they begin to live the good life after 5 years, and it is mass confusion only in 12 months. After this administration, now the facts are clear, this administration would have placed in the public domain, in the economy, more money in the people's hands while we're having a pandemic of astronomical proportions,
Yes.
more money in the people's hands than the government had placed in 5 years, the last government.
Yes. So Critic, I disagree with you. You seem to think that the guy is lying there. I think he's truthful that people were beginning to live the good life in the last regime. But you have to understand that, you have to understand his definition of people. So, yes, people were beginning to live the good life. But who were these people? It was the government ministers that they took a massive salary increase for, that they were paying a pension plan for, that, that was paid for by us so that they can fly abroad, get health care for themselves and their families abroad, increasing the per diem. Ministers, you recall the infamous Simona Brooms, etc., the meals. You should see what they're eating. And by the way, talking about eating, Harman said I go to Hard Rock to eat from there, right? And that I hold cabinet. Let me say to Harman, every time I go to Hard Rock to eat something, I pay for it from my pocket. The businessmen don't buy it for me. I pay for it, like how they used to fet him up. And free birthday bashes at different places, etc. And you recall when he was campaigning, running against Walter Lawrence, he brought in some lobster and crab and everything, fancy steak at the Georgetown Club the night before to bribe the delegates. And then that night they had a crash up of about 8 or 9 government vehicles, and it never made the media. They ducked it all. So I'm getting it from the police now. I have some pictures that someone sent me that night about that. So freeness is Harman's thing. He thinks when I go to Hard Rock, because that's what he is accustomed to when he goes out, like remember the trip to China? That when he goes out, they fet him. I pay my own bill. Since he found it to say this in the media, then now the man wants to know what I'm eating to, where I'm going. He has this obsession. So I just had to get that in. But coming back to who are his people, so who were enjoying the good life? They were this group in the government, the group that they gave a lot of land to, the group that they gave contracts to, and then some of his friends, the big businessmen, who were depositing money over all the time, paying handsomely for what they got. And some of them got enormous. 4 businessmen got nearly $40 billion worth of contracts. Indo-Guyanese and Afro-Guyanese. So he didn't discriminate there. So after those were his people. Those enjoyed a good life. After the elections, his definition of the people switched to ordinary Afro-Guyanese on the ground. But they were not enjoying the good life. They were not the ones, because they were faced with higher taxes, tax on water, on electricity, VAT, on machinery and equipment, on food stuff. You recall that. On airline travel, they had higher fees to pay for almost everything, like 200 items, from gun licenses to selling fees for small shops, etc. Everything went up for them. And that is what they were faced with. And then the withdrawal of the subsidy for pension, the withdrawal of the children's grant, that is the good life that they were facing, ordinary people. But he's right. He's right. His definition of his people at that time were the big guys who were fatting them up nicely. So maybe that is what he meant when he said his people. That's why I have to disagree with you a bit.
Dr. Jagdeo, most of the times we have an interview, there are fruitful things that come out, and there's always gains for the Guyanese people. And that's why I'm mostly here. I see I got some notes and things. Is that you made notes of things you wanted to express, or you got something for the people? You got anything for the people?
No. Basically, it was just, I was talking to Frank earlier.
Okay.
And so I don't really need to say it. It's just that how many, the percentages of vaccination per region, and I was trying to find out. So I was looking at the hinterland region, like region 1 is 70.8%, when the national average is 56.6. It's 70.8.
So they've been
Region
doing fairly well in the
right.
outskirts.
Region 8 is a low 38.2, very difficult. Region 7, 57.8. Region 9, 66.2. And Region 10, it's 18.9. So the coastal regions too are doing well. But these are the interior regions. That's how we're doing on the vaccination. I said 86% of the people, it's 82.2% of the people over 62 have been vaccinated. So 1 in every 5 persons over 60 has been vaccinated, which is good because, you know, it tends to, it has a bigger toll on older folks. So that is what I have here.
Okay,
It's
I
nothing,
just
no,
checking
no.
because
I was
I
just-
we got
I was
something
just
to forget.
talking- I was just
Because
talking-
every time we talk, the government, every time this government speaks, they
No,
talking
there are
about billions. They give 4 billion
No,
here, 5 billion. Say somehow we
there
get
are
something.
there are lots of things more we have before the end of the year. Lots of programs, and it's not just giving out those things, but it's also keep trying to get the economy going. Look at just a couple of days ago, the president made a decision. We will, because a single container has moved, a 20-foot container to ship from China to Ghana, has moved from 2005 to now 15,000 US dollars. Just imagine that increase for one container. A 40-foot container has gone to from just over 3,000 to $20,000. Now, if you calculate the taxes, the local taxes on CIF, that is how the taxes are levied on goods. Costs, insurance, and freight. So if the cost of the goods remain practically the same, but if the freight goes up and insurance, then, and you add, say calculate 10% or 14%, say the VAT, on a higher base, then they'd end up paying more taxes, and therefore the price will even go up further. So we decided to use the old rate in calculating the taxes, so that they would not have to pay more taxes because of this escalation, so that the price of good can remain fairly constant in the market, because we're very worried about the cost of living. It will go up for a while, and then as things level off, production levels get up back globally in a year or so, maybe 2 years, then it should come back to normalcy. But right now we're battling with that too. We can't do anything much about it because even in the US they've been hit hard by that. Plywood, sheetrock, building material generally skyrocketed, steel, those things affecting a lot of people, including some food stuff, grains and stuff coming in.
Dr. Jagdeo, is your government considering...
And so that alone, just to mention, cost us in excess of $4 billion, nearly $5 billion. It doesn't look like we're giving it up, but we're giving it up for a purpose. The purpose is not to put pressure on ordinary people, because the businessmen will pass that straight on to the consuming public if we didn't do that.
In light of the raising prices and your government's consideration, many considerations, is there any consideration on fuel prices?
Fuel prices have been adjusted. So we have a excise tax. The excise tax is 50%. So when there is a movement upwards, like in the cost of acquisition, we lower the taxes so that it tends to balance off. And that's how we have used the 50% tax as an adjuster. So sometimes it could come as low as 5% if the price of fuel is high. Like one time when the price when in 2010 or so, in fact in 2014, the barrel of crude was about $120. At that time it was 5 or 10%. But as the price fell to $30, the tax moved up back to 50%. So it doesn't change the prices in the local market. That is constantly being used by successive PPP governments as an adjuster. And that's how we use it until now.
Dr. Jagdeo, I just recently went across Region 5 and Region 6. I'm actually just back from there. And I have seen the effects of the sugar industry being literally demolished. I've seen the effects.
Yeah.
I know there's some plans your administration have even to reach out even more than they've already done, trying to get the sugar industry back on track. You're going directly and dealing with the persons who lost their jobs.
Sure.
Also, the healthcare system there is being looked at. And so could you give us a little?
No, definitely. I've done it. And I think the last interview we had, I mentioned that we're looking at a special initiative. I'm working on this. I briefed the president about it for those people who were laid off. And it is consistent with what we promised when we were in opposition. We believe in fulfilling the promises. I haven't gotten around to it, but this will be done shortly. And then because of the Gaisuko's wars, a lot of the health facilities in these areas, which were run by Gaisuko, have not been serving people. So we are going to be putting more of the like drugs and stuff back into the pharmacies in these areas, taking over some of the health facilities and bringing them over to the public sector. Well, not the public sector, but
Under
the central government.
Central.
The central government. So there are lots of initiatives for a lot of these areas, but we're also looking to see how we can boost employment in these areas. We're still looking for private investment in the sugar industry. We've had some offer. So it's not just the revitalization of the industry, it's not just from a government's perspective, but in combination with the private sector. At Wales, etc., we believe with our plans there, the plans that we have for the West Coast will absorb all of the 1,700 persons who've been laid off, and probably the 800 others of the private cane farmers who couldn't plant anymore. It's nearly 2,500 persons who are directly affected by that closure, that they can be absorbed into new opportunities over there, and that there'll be thousands of more jobs on the West Coast side. We believe with the bridge completed too and some plans for the East Bank, you're going to have much more employment on the East Bank too, that can absorb some of the population growth in Region 3, some in Region 4. We're now looking at growing the city along the East Coast, and so the president has been personally spearheading the planning process to set up some new housing facilities and schemes along the way on the East Coast that will see private developers working with government to push those schemes, and then there will be public sector ones too that are more affordable to people. And then we're identifying a few areas along the East Coast as investment hubs for industrial, commercial type activities that will generate more employment. We're in Berbice, which is another populous region where it's more difficult to get private investments to go there. They tend to want to come more to the city, Region 4, Region 3. So we're looking at a series of public sector investment that will help with the job creation up in Berbice. There are plans for every region. I can go to the hinterland region, etc., Region 10. That could be the subject of another whole interview, but we're very conscious about the promises we made, and yes, we have something in store for those workers.
Dr. Jagdeo, we've covered a lot so far. I want to close on a point that is going to be a major developmental project for Region 3, the gas to power. With anti-development opposition, the opposition cried on the Marriott is a success, many other projects that forged through. They cried on the Amelia Falls. We see that now we would have had power. Unfortunately, that project is not, didn't go through as a result of their direct pulling it down. Can the Guyanese citizens rest assured that we will have a gas to power project and it will be beneficial to the citizens of Guyana?
Yes, it will happen, and it will get down the price of electricity to half of what people are paying at now. That's our promise. And we're going to get it done by 2024. To build it in time for that to happen, we'll drop the price of cooking gas significantly too, because that would be a byproduct of the gas that we're bringing in. We'll have propane, we'd have a lot, so there'll be a number of subsidiary benefits, not just cheaper electricity for people, but cheaper cooking gas, a whole range of stuff, significant impact on Guyanese people. So I can say for sure we're working day and night. These things require a lot of work, a lot of studies, a lot of design, because design work to ensure that we minimize environmental impact, the impact on communities, but they serve their purpose. I made it clear that we promised this to the electorate. The electorate voted us, gave us the mandate based on these promises. We have to deliver on them. We can't get a McCormack from a one-man NGO to block this. 236,000 people voted for us, and they said, yes, we want this. And we have to account for them, and not only them. The 236,000 voted for us, but the 200 other thousand who voted, they also want cheap power. I'm sure that they want cheap power too. They didn't vote for the PPP, but they want the cheap power. They want cheaper cooking gas. They don't. At the end of the 5 years, people have to say, did you fulfill your promise? What kind of government will we be if we don't keep our promise to the electorate? And we must go on and bow down to the McCormacks of the world and say, we have to clear everything with you. And then when you look at the comments they make, the comments are not grounded on any technical basis. They're almost emotive. This was the same GHRA that called for us to stop building the Hope Canal. Had we not built that Hope Canal, the last flood season in Mahaica and from Mahaica to Georgetown, we'd be in serious trouble. We would have been underwater in the last flood.
Dr. Jagdeo, you said 2024 we'll have the gas to power plant, and fuel, the cost for electricity will be by half. I see 2025 is the next election. I see you strategizing in terms of a walkaway, because your government in 2025 will be most likely campaigning on what you did. And the opposition wouldn't be able to say what they did or what they can do, because they've not proven themselves.
They haven't proven. That is why they have to go to race. They have no track record. PNC was in office for 28 years, and I'm not going to go through it. When they left the country with us, we had a return to democracy. Just read the Caribbean Council of Churches report. Everybody, and they say that these are the Christian community sent a mission to Guyana in the 90s to look at what was taking place in Guyana. And their report is the most devastating report. They said people had lost hope in this country. It ranked us below Haiti. McIntyre did a report also. McIntyre, who I think for one of the agencies might have been the World Bank. The report was devastating. If you look at Carl Greenwich's letter in the green mining construction, it would paint the picture of a bankrupt economy. He was truthful. a bankrupt economy. After half of our population had fled, where rats were eating out people's fingers at the hospital. We had no drugs. You couldn't drive on a single street. It was all pothole. Power used to go out for a week at a time. We all used to push these little ball-bearing carts with fetching water around the countryside, you know. You had nothing. You had nothing in the country at that time. And that's what they left us. So no track record then. Then they came in back to office and they used to say, oh, we are clean. And it's the most corrupt government. They left us the most corrupt government. Came into office on campaigning against fighting corruption. In 3 years of their tenure, they never submitted a single statement to the Integrity Commission. When we had been submitted from 2000 to now, they never submitted anything. All the huge scandals, etc. They came in saying they had a plan. There were security guys, all of these. You wouldn't have crime. Well, you know what happened. The crime went up. They came in about a good life for everyone. People saw deterioration in their life. They saw an increase in their tax burden. They saw a loss of jobs. Tens of thousands lost their jobs. So they have no track record. They didn't solve the power situation. They didn't put in no major power plant in 5 years. They killed their miler, but didn't put in a single new power plant of any magnitude. Left us with the old units that we had from Wärtsilä, the 20-something years ago that we put in place. Didn't fix the grid. What record do they have? And then, of course, they had one record, which is trying to, consistent with their past, trying to steal elections. You know, we had the record, Guinness Book of World Record, for the longest period between an election being held and the results being declared. 5 months. That's the APNU track record after trying to steal the elections. What are you going to campaign on? You don't have that. You don't have any vision or plan for the future. You campaign on race. You campaign on race. That's all that they can do. That is what we have to deal with every single day. And the Air Finale government has to contend with all of this as it tries to move the country forward. You have an aggressive set of people who work very hard in the government. The president himself worked very hard. And all you get is not a single help. You know, when I went into Parliament, I led our team into Parliament. The first day in Parliament, I did an interview and I said, in opposition, we will support the government for anything that will bring greater benefits for people. Any initiative, and we will fight for even greater benefits for them. But we will vigorously oppose them on any issue that seeks to, or legislation that seeks to reduce benefits or to take away their rights. And that was our approach. We supported when needed, urged them to do more, and we fought the taxes that they were putting in place. We fought the other things. These guys are fighting the good initiatives for people. They're fighting the children's grant. They're fighting COVID assistance. They're not fighting you because we didn't go with tax increases. We're just going with reducing the taxes all the time.
Dr. Jagdeo, on that note, I want to thank you once again for a positive interview highlighting the transparency in your government. And I leave you to anything you want to leave with the viewers.
No, well, I hope that that they will witness a change in behavior. I'm not holding my breath. I'm not holding my breath. Since Harman said I was gasping for breath at the last interview, so I'm not holding my breath for him because I know he's inept, useless, incapable. He operates only behind the strength of President Granger, and because some people still have a residual respect for President Granger, but Harman is nothing. Nobody respects him. Nobody thinks he has any vision or idea that could leave this country, that could lead the country forward. So you have to forgive his occasional ad hominem attacks, personal attacks all the time. That's what they've done that to me. That's what you just read here. This is not new. This has been from the time I entered politics, they've been cussing me. And it's not that I don't care because of arrogance. I've grown accustomed to it, and that doesn't help them or the country. And I'm here working to help people. That's my job.
Thank you once again, Dr. Jagdeo.
Okay, all right.